Welcome to the Culture Couch Live this week. Adam, Carly and Mel, how are we? All good?
Hello.
Very well, thank you, Paul.
Going well? Everyone's good? Tick, yes?
Yep. How was your Thanksgiving lunch, Ruzi? Did you eat the turkey?
No, well, we didn't have a big family because we're in Hawaii sort of thing. So it was it was a egg wrap, which is probably not really in the American Thanksgiving menu. So
are you meant to have pumpkin pie?
We did reflect, but yeah, well, normally that's actually a really good lunch. It's super traditional. It's like turkey and then the baked ham and then I think the apple pie, pumpkin pie, all that sort of stuff. And it said, someone told me it's the biggest travel weekend. I think it's bigger than Christmas. I think everyone sort of comes back home for Thanksgiving. So it's a huge, but we just had myself, Tammy and Tyler, just a little simple little thing. And Tyler had been out the night before, so I got up at 2:00. So that put a kibosh on the lunch sort of things. as they do sort of thing. But thanks for that. Hey, good conversation, Carly. I'm not going to take credit for this. Like a good leader, I'm going to deflect the credit to you because you came up with this Culture Couch Live. But yeah, really simple question. The best leader that we would have, and for those clients that we've worked with would know that we talk a bit about, are you the leader you wish you had? Hadn't we? It's sort of an exercise we do within the session, but we hadn't really reflected on the leaders we had. So Carly, well done. Really good question when you shot it through sort of thing. So who wants to start? Adam, I'm 59, mate. Are you older than me or younger than me?
I think you should start, Ruzi. Everyone wants to know who your best leader was.
All right, well, why don't I start? And I'll make a general comment first. I guess the good thing is, and probably what we do with our what I did with my 1998 audit is take parts of everyone. Yeah, like I think that's what you should do. And probably one of the things I regret is not journaling as I was coming through my footy career, like writing down some of the things that Wolsey was doing really well and Parko was doing really well and all that sort of stuff. So my first comment would be, you should take things from everyone, the good things and the bad. And that comes back to 1998. But probably the one that I want to reflect on is Andrew Ireland, because when I got my first coaching gig, I was clearly underprepared, as every coach is that comes in the AFL system. So I'm sitting there at my desk. Rodney retires. 2 days later, I'm coach of the Sydney Swans. And the reason I picked Andrew is he had an amazing capacity to simplify everything.
So, what role was Andrew, Ruzi?
So Andrew, again, it's a good question, Carly, because what I would say is Andrew Ireland had been the CEO of the Brisbane Lions. He really wanted to get back into a football role. And we were really lucky at Sydney that he agreed to be the football manager, which was in a sense a step down. But for Andrew, he wanted to get more in the footy side of it, loved the footy side of it sort of thing. So here I am as a young coach with the general manager of football, or the football manager, an ex-CEO of a multiple premiership team that had worked with Lee Matthews and some of the great people. So sitting next to me in his office. And that was awesome because he really simplified everything. And probably the biggest takeaway I got from Andrew was what's really important. All right. There's a lot of noise in footy, a lot of stuff that goes on, salary caps and drafts and picking teams. And, a lot of stuff we've talked about on Culture Couch and we talk about. But what I really remember from him, he had the ability to keep it simple. And if I was doing something wrong, he would maybe ask a question. And match committee, hang on, can we just stop there? Should we really move? I know we've lost our centre forward, but do we really want to move our centre back to centre forward? Because we've got a great centre back. Why would we create two problems? And I'm like, actually, that's a really good. He wouldn't talk often, but when he would talk, everyone listened, and he made so much sense. Calm, and again, we never did profiling, but I'm probably thinking he might have been a green, blue, blue, green sort of thing. So, I know we talk a lot about the Reds used to be that, but he was the CEO and green, blue, blue, green, really analytical, pretty good people person, didn't like conflict, which at times was probably his downfall. But for me, he was amazing. Does that make sense on that? Because I reckon it's a good conversation. So, Adam, what about yourself?
So, like you, Paul, I think I chose a bit from lots of different people, but to name some, when I first worked in the music business, I worked for Chris Murphy. Now, he's passed away recently, so and may he rest in peace, but he managed In Excess from the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
And he was to give you an idea of the sort of personality and temperament, he liked playing ice hockey.
Yeah, right.
Hard. And
Wow.
he wasn't a big man. So
Is he Canadian?
fiercely determined.
He wasn't Canadian, was he?
No,
How did he get into ice hockey in Australia? There's no rink.
Yeah. He found his sport. And as a manager, this unwavering belief that this band was going to take the world, and that was his job to get them there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that was with force. So I wouldn't choose every single thing about him, but geez, there was some amazing things I learned from working with him. In the music business, Mark Pope, he'd worked with Cold Chisel amongst many other bands, and Jimmy Barnes as a solo artist. His drive, but also his ability to use humor, and just his self-awareness was so good that he knew when to make people laugh and use that as a great weapon, to advance things and get loyalty and drive. And from that, Sean James, who's now with the Giants, the Greater Western Sydney Giants, but he ran a sales team at Channel 10 when I worked there.
Yeah.
His passion, his drive, his commitment, he's a support of people, was something I took from him. Michael Anderson, who ran Austereo, Southern Cross Austereo, strategic mind. Greg Highwood, former journalist that ran Fairfax. There's bits of all of them that I can take. Russell Tate, who I worked with at Macquarie Media. So he was, John Singleton's right-hand person. They worked together for 20-odd years. And his insights into advertising and branding and marketing, I took so much from that. I think, if we all count ourselves lucky and we kind of suppress our ego enough to maintain our self-awareness and just register what you can learn from people, I think I've learned from so many people different things that I try and incorporate in the way I work.
And I think that's the thing, as I said before, Adam, it's like when you're going up the org chart, take some notes, because there will be some things which we're not going to talk about today, but there will be some things we don't like. And as you're going through it, Wolsey was super strategic. Parker, I've never seen a more organized person in my life. He used to write these in retros up, which were 10 pages. So take things from everyone. Carly, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Ruzi. And the thing that stands out to me is that, I was always searching for the perfect leader. I always wanted to work for someone who was the perfect leader. And I'd be like, oh, but they're really good at this, but they're not so good at this. Oh, look, I really want to find my perfect leader. And until I started working with this team here, I didn't really think you could improve being a leader. I sort of thought you were either born to be a good leader or you weren't. And I think that's been a real eye-opener for me, because it's behavioural, it's about the actions you display. So therefore, if you understand what they are and you know what you want to be, you can absolutely improve. So I think that's really important. But, people that I've learnt from, particularly one leader who would always at the beginning of every quarter stand up and put the 3 things we were working towards on a page and get everyone together, get everyone to buy in, get everyone in the room and say, right, these are the 3 things we're going to do this quarter. And then the next quarter we'd update and we'd have a look and we'd go do it again. And for me, that was the first time anyone had really done that and said, look, this is the direction we want to go in. And for me, I thought that was really fantastic. But I think it's really important, like you say, to know who you want to be as a leader.
Yeah.
So that you can hold yourself accountable. And that's what you talk about all the time, Ruzi, is how do you hold yourself accountable? And so, Mel, I think that's what's really interesting about it, isn't it? Knowing who you are and who you want to be makes such a massive difference in terms of how you behave in that arena.
Yeah, I think self-awareness, Mel, I just want to pick up on that point, because the more I'm doing this with Performance by Design and the longer I'm out of, and I worked, as you guys know, I'll tell some of my great work stories.
The best insurance person in the world is what I recall, Ruzi.
Best shoe salesman, best photocopy salesman. So the list goes on. But I think what you said is right. Don't look for the perfect leader. But the more I'm in the corporate space, self-awareness, Mel, is almost number one. I think you can overcome, if you don't know what your deficiencies are, you're no chance, all right? Because there's no such thing as a perfect leader. But if you at least have an awareness of what your strengths and weaknesses are, I almost feel like, Carly, that's almost a number. The more I think about it, it's the number one thing. But Mel, for you, what was your journey like, and some of your mentors that you learned from?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I had experience with a spectrum of leaders. Some of them were absolutely inspirational and aspirational. Others were very task-focused and very command and control based. So through that journey, a bit like, I think the theme that we're all sort of picking up on is that you develop your own leadership by watching other leaders. And I actually worked with a business recently who said, we don't promote anybody who hasn't worked with less than 3 leaders across the business. And very often you get some very early entrants into a business that say, right, I've seen that bloke, I know what I need to do. But the truth is, to hone your own leadership style is a journey in itself. And to your point, Rosie, it involves self-awareness. And without that self-awareness, you can't improve, you can't shift your leadership style, and you can't really reflect on what you're doing well and where you do need to grow. So for me, I think from my leadership, my time in leadership, all of those threads sort of came together. But the 2 words that I wrote down while all of you were speaking earlier was that for me, it was a privilege to be a leader. I really felt like it was an honor to be a leader. And with that came immense responsibility. And that's the other side of it. Yes, you are the leader, but you also have the responsibility to grow your people and your team as a leader. That's what leadership is.
Yeah, good point. One thing I want to touch on is this life experiences. It's interesting, and I'll reflect on, like, when teams look for coaches, the thing that fascinates me, they always go to the most successful teams. And I always felt you have to be at a poor team to be a good coach. Like, you have to have seen what it's like to be really bad, because most of the time you're actually going to a bad footy team. So if you continually look for staff that have only been at successful organizations. So Adam, maybe back to you, how important is just that experience that you've seen? And again, if I reflect on Robert Walls, and, he was a Carlton player, school teacher, Parko lecturer, multiple coaches, different life experiences. Andrew Ireland had, been a player, premiership, missed out in the premiership, but played in 4 grand finals. So probably the common theme, I remember Jeff Polides as well, who was the CEO of Ford, was a guy that was actually sitting in a box taking notes, which was unbelievable. How important is it, maybe I'll put it differently, how is it important for you in your own leadership journey to understand the impact of life experiences on leadership, not just your work experiences?
I think it's probably the most resonant lessons I've had, Paul, are the ones where I've been really tough situations. And some of them you would say, well, we failed. If you're being really blunt on it, we did X really well, but we failed. And so who do you pick? The one who's gone through failure and worked out how to get out of it? Or do you go with someone who's always won? And so I don't know that there's an absolute answer to that question. I know in my case, though, if I was being truly honest with myself and self-aware at the same time, I know that I could have done better in lots of different instances. And figuring out how I could have been better was something almost impossible to learn in theory. I had to go through it in practice and be able to have trust, self-awareness, and communicate with people going, I think this is going wrong. We were heading here. I don't think this is right. And knowing that the right thing is to address it as soon as it comes up. And the more experienced I got,
that's a great point.
I think the better I was able to sense that something was wrong. And maybe even sense is the wrong word. I think, gut feel is often used, but really your mind is always being informed by different situations. And the more you've had bad ones, the better I think I was able to spot, this isn't feeling right for whatever reason. And, if you look at it, the guardrails, you just learn how to bring them in on when things are going wrong. No, okay, I need to step in here. That's my job. That's me as being responsible to lead this situation, is to make sure it doesn't come to harm. And I think I just learned how to better bring those guardrails in, over time, so that we didn't sway off course very
Yeah.
much.
Mm.
And so I
I
think that,
reckon, yeah, I reckon
sorry,
Adam,
Paul, just going to say to your point around self-awareness, I think that was the critical part and me learning how to apply that.
Yeah,
I
so
reckon-
which is more important, trust or self-awareness?
Ooh,
I
it's hard.
think
self
you have to have both,
Yeah.
Or are
but
they
it's
the same, or they
impossible
go
without
hand in hand?
trust.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
if you cannot trust yourself and trust others, and work out how to work on that, because it's always a work in progress. I think you're going to fail at some point, right? So
Mm.
I'd say trust first, but implicit within that is to do that you have to be self-aware.
Yeah,
Can
no,
I
I
add
think
to that too? Just one quick note on that. One of the learnings for me is that if leaders don't trust themselves, there is no way anybody else will trust them, and that becomes very obvious. And that's where the authenticity piece comes in as well for leaders. So it's really easy to spot a leader who doesn't trust themselves, and you lose the people on that journey. There is no way you can win that back. So it's crucial. It's not an option, but you need to have faith in where you're going as a leader, and then people will follow you on that journey.
And I think you brought up the word authenticity, Mel. I think authenticity is pretty simple. I don't know this. Guys, can you help me? And I think that's to your point, Carly. I think is it Simon Sinek talks about trust is an action. It's not, it's an action. And I love that. If we look at trust as an action, and Murph does this really well in workshops, talks about the trust bank, but trust is an action. It's not like as much as, you know, when I went to Melbourne, I came with a premiership and came with a reputation. I'm sure you've all done that. But Melbourne players, once I'm there, they're obviously aware of what I've done. But that really struck with me. The actions that I then have to do build the trust, Carly. That's really important.
Yeah. Yep. You have, and that's why I find it really difficult, the conversation about, you know, we do profiling with a lot of clients and we talk with a lot of leaders, and some of them who say, you know, this profile is my work persona, but then I'm different at home.
Yeah.
And I find that really difficult, because that's the authenticity piece, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, now in 2022, the authentic leader means that who you are at home and who you are at work is the same thing. So you are showing up as your true self, you're being vulnerable, you're, you know, behaving in accordance to who you want to be as a person. And that's that authenticity piece, Ruzi, I think. And it's hard to trust someone who has these two different personas.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to that trust as well. So,
yeah,
you know, I think that's really important too.
Quick. You can see through them pretty quickly, can't you? I mean, we talk about getting out of your, you know, we won't go into too much of the profile. We talk about getting out of your dominant color. So I think that's a different scenario, that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah, I think that's part of it as well. But maybe just to finish off, and we've probably touched on a little bit, but if you were to pick one trait of those really good leaders, one consistent trait, Mel, I'll start with you. What would it be if you said you have to have X? Or maybe I'm happy to go to
me, I think for me, the one thing that hasn't come up that much in this conversation is resilience. And I saw it actually occurred to me during this conversation that one of the best CEOs that I've ever watched showed phenomenal resilience. And even in the face of insurmountable objectives for the business, he would say, never give up, forge ahead. We're going this way, guys. And by hook or by crook, people would follow. And he did achieve incredible things that were, you know, unimaginable for the business. So resilience for me.
Carly?
Oh, I might pick two, Ruzi. So reliability, like you do what you say. The leaders who say, yep, I'm going to do this, and they do it. I think that builds enormous trust and is really, really important. And the second thing I think is the ability to connect and build relationships with your people. Yeah. So you talk about it a lot. And there's some other CEOs that I've seen who, even if they're the CEO, a new starter starts, they reach out to them, they make them feel welcome, they get them on board, they check in, they make sure everyone's okay. And that's probably a new leadership skill in terms of, you know, the style of leadership. But I think the impact that has on the business and the belonging and the engagement that develops for the team is phenomenal.
Yeah, great. Adam?
Care. So I think if you are truly comfortable with caring for yourself, your team, for the company you work for, it comes through in we care about these goals. We care about the values and behaviors we've agreed to.
Yeah.
We care enough about each other to make sure we're giving each other feedback. And
Yep.
so really having the space in your head, your heart, and your diary to express that care.
Yep.
I think that's probably the summary of the parts for me.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I talked about self-awareness as number one. Probably the other one I think is let people do their job. I think that's the other thing I've seen. Allow them to do their job. Be really clear on what your expectations are of them. But if you look over their shoulder all the time, you talk about trust, Carly. If you don't let people do their job and let them make decisions and let them, get on with stuff, you never get anything done, and then you lose trust. So that's awesome. Really good conversation. So Carly, well done. Thanks for shooting that through to us. And hopefully everyone at home listening took something from it. And also, more importantly, gives you an opportunity to think through your leadership journey, at home. Like, what did you like? Because as much as what we think, it's now about you listening to go, oh yeah, I remember that. They'll love that. I didn't like that. And think about are you the leader you wish you had? That's a really good way to look
The
at
other
things.
one, Lizzie, is are you someone else's best leader that they've ever
Leader.
had?
Yeah, great point. Yeah, are you someone else's best leader? Yeah, would they mention you? That's a really good point. So, yep, well done. Awesome Culture Couch Live. Really enjoyed the conversation. So, thanks, Adam. Thanks, Carly. Thanks,
Thank you,
Mel.
Paul.
Thanks,
Thanks,
team.
Rosie.
See you next week.
All right.
Bye,
We'll see
guys.
you next week on the Culture Couch Live.